Attorney? Yeah. But when we got married at 7 o'clock in the morning. Mary was teaching in Chester County down there, Kennett Square. I was over in New Jersey at the experiment station. And so we came home on, I think it was on a Monday. We married on a Wednesday. So we drove through on a Monday to Waynesburg. And then Tuesday we went to get the marriage license. And I just assumed to go to the courthouse, but Mary didn't want to get the license there. She wanted to go over to Washington, over to the next county. And she told me about 3 months ago why. It's the first I knew. She's a little older than I am, and she didn't want to put in the paper.
What's the green flag to know?
And so, but we had all plans made, and Mary said, well, we'll just have her father and mother stand up with us in the ministry. Just that's all it'll be. That's all there'll be, just the 5 of us. But Mary's father, always called him Arch. Her father finally said, well, now wait a minute, you can't do that. Facts of it, he'd been telling everybody around the county that there are a lot of people around the county is going to be a wedding one of these days. And so Arch says, no, you can't do that. Says, you're going to get married and go on your way, but says, we've got to live here. And Mary says, okay, Papa.
Okay, Pop, make your list.
Make your list. And so he made out a list, and we went around at 7 o'clock the night before and invited people to the wedding the next morning at 7 o'clock. And we had 28 there. But, of course, the real reason why I wanted to get married at 8 o'clock, or 7 o'clock, I couldn't see any reason to wasting the whole day. I wanted to get to Kentucky that night. And so we had the crowd there, and we got married at 7 o'clock in the morning. And had a reception.
Yes, you did see the picture.
Well, we had a reception there, and I found a picture of the wedding group. But I guess we got away about 10 o'clock, and we drove to Ashland, Kentucky, eastern Kentucky.
The Daniel Boone Hotel. Hubert.
Are you going to tell this?
Hubert's family are very close to the Boones.
So we stayed at Ashland at the hotel that night, and then the next day we went across to Lexington, Kentucky, which you will go through. No, you won't go through. We went to Lexington, Kentucky, and Mary had been south of Mason-Dixon line. She wanted to hear people talk. And so she said, stop and talk to this fellow. I want to hear him talk. Well, we stopped and talked here and there. Stopped one place, an old man sitting out in front of a little house, little shack, sitting on one box and another box on his lap, and just whittling, flies flying around. And so I had to make some sort of conversation. So I asked him, what is the next, how far is the next town? I knew how far it was. Well, I don't know. I told him. It was about 17 miles. Well, I guess so. I said, how big a town is it? He said, don't know, tell the truth, never been there. So we went on, talked to several different people. We stopped at Lexington and visited a college classmate of Mary's. They sat together. Her name was Hakes and Mary's was Harkins, so they sat together in a lot of classes. So we stopped to see them. They'd been married a little over a year, and he was teaching at the University of Kentucky. And she was just as homesick as she could be. And they were expecting an arrival in another month or two. And so we just expected to stop and see them and go on our way. But that wasn't the way it worked out. We had to stay all night. Not only that, they showed us all around Lexington, all the horse farms the next day. And we stayed the second night. And so then on Friday, we went on west to Louisville, and then went south down to the caves. You came right up through there, went down to the caves, and we didn't get to the Mammoth Cave, but we first stopped at the Black Onyx Cave, which is out north of the other caves. We stopped there and saw, wasn't very few people traveling. A boy about 14 years old took us through the caves. Very nice boy. And we were getting along toward the end of the day, and so we asked him about where there might be a tourist home. We didn't have motels like they have now. The tourist home, and he told us about a nice tourist home there in this little town where Black Onyx Cave was, and Mary asked if it was a nice place. Oh yes. And he said, well, do you know these people that have it? Oh yes, it's my mother. And so we decided to go on down to Horse Cave, Kentucky, and maybe stay down there. But we got down there, and there was very little traveling at that time, and just one hotel in town, no motels. And they had a man out in the street drumming up trade, trying to get you to come in and stay at the hotel. We went to a small restaurant there, and we didn't have too much to eat that night because things didn't look too good. But we had cantaloupe and ice cream for supper. And, well, should we go over to the hotel? And Mary said, let's go back and stay up there at that tourist house. And so we went back and stayed at that tourist house that night. It was very nice. His mother took good care of us. And I remember when we went up there, they had everything. They brought up a bowl and water, pitcher of water. But very well remember, it was an old rope bed. Instead of springs, there's ropes across the bed. Every time you turn over, it's squeaking and wake you up. Well, the next morning we went back down to Horse Cave for breakfast. It didn't look any better than it did the night before, so we had cantaloupe and ice cream for breakfast. So then we went through the Floyd Collins cave. Floyd Collins was the fellow that lived down in that area that explored a lot of caves, and he died in the cave. He had his foot passed in between some rocks, and so he died in this cave. And after they found the body, they fixed the casket and buried him right in the cave, or left him right in the cave there. But we went through that cave, and then we was getting along around the street, 2:30 in the afternoon by that time, and we had breakfast kind of late, so we knew there wasn't too good a place to eat there, so we started back to Louisville. And we got to Louisville, about 4 o'clock. We stopped at the Brown Hotel for dinner. And went in, and I remember very well what we had. We had ham steak. Each one of us had ham steak, and it was very good. But I parked the car on the street, and we came out. Was going to go on out to my home, and came out to get in the car. I had a Pontiac coupe that I'd had it about a year, and took a hold of the handle and just turned around and couldn't get in. I looked around, how am I going to get in? Well, the hinges happened to be on the outside, so I figured I better take the hinges off. And the cop come walking along, and I said, the lock's broken on this door and I can't get in. I got to take these hinges off. Would you help me? He helped me take the hinges off and get in. Never even asked to see my driver's license or the car license or anything. And we got in across the river over into Indiana, went west from there, about 60 miles, I guess, that night. Stayed there on our way to Illinois. Was going out to the farm in Illinois on our wedding trip. And so then the next day would be Sunday, I guess it was. We drove on into my home at near Paris, Illinois, and on the farm, 3-room house, a 5-room house. Dad and mother lived there. Younger brother just graduated from high school. He was home for the summer. Older brother just come back from taking graduate work in New Hampshire. He was there for the summer. My sister, who had been married about a year, she and her husband come down there for their vacation. And my other sister got married just 4 days after we had. So they didn't have any money either, so they came down there for their honeymoon. And so that's the crowd that was there in that 5-room house for the next 4 days. And so we stayed there during that length of time. And Carolyn insisted I tell the crowd about something that happened there. Al, my brother-in-law, had gotten interested in golf. And so he wanted to practice. And so he was get out in the yard, and hit the ball and bounced it against the barn. It was a concrete block barn. Sometimes it bounced clear back over the house. Well, several of us tried that, and I wanted Mary to come out and try it. Oh, she didn't particularly want to, but she finally consented to, under a little pressure. And so I set up the pin and put the ball on it, and she was all ready to hit it. And before I got back out of the way, she drew back real quick, and that hit me right in the nose. Broke my nose. What a way to start a 50-year married life. And but we stayed there. I think it was still Sunday, and then we drove back to Richmond, Indiana. Then the next day we drove back to Waynesburg. Then the next day we stayed all night there, and then the next day we drove on to New Jersey. And how young people can be foolish and everything. We didn't even have an apartment to go to. We hadn't even looked at that. But we knew we could get along all right. A lot of faith, you know. Well, we found a tourist home at Somerville, about 10 miles from Middlebush. We stayed there that night. It was in the summertime. They usually rented the room out to teachers in the wintertime. But we stayed there that night, and I went to work the next day, and we started looking for an apartment. Well, we found an apartment, a furnished apartment. Things were getting a little bit tight just before the crash, and a young couple had this furnished apartment that they had lived in for a while, and he lost his job, and they couldn't get a job, so they had to go back to his home up in Pennsylvania. And here it was June, and they had the apartment rented till the 1st of September. So they rented us the apartment furnished till the 1st of September, just what they were paying for it, unfurnished. And so there's where we lived until the 1st of September. And then on the 1st of September, Mary started teaching back down at Kennett Square. About the 5th, I guess it was, and about 100 miles down there. So the week before she went down, she traveled with me, but we came back. We went back over to Somerville then and got the same room for weekends that we had when we first came back for a wedding trip. They'd rented the room, and so 2 women teachers had the room in the week, during the week, and they'd go home Friday night, and we'd have it Friday night and Saturday night and Sunday night, and then ready to leave on Monday morning to go back to teach. And the teachers that had the room during the week. Well, we stayed there and lived that way until about the 15th of November. And that's after we had to give up the apartment. So we got another apartment over in Highland Park and stayed over there. Furnished that. It was about the 15th of November when we first started housekeeping with our own furniture. We went out and bought furniture for that. And, such as it was, we still got one of the day beds. And we lived there until about the next March, I guess. That's longer than that, but then we moved out to Middlebush and found a house out there, and the house was a parsonage. They didn't have a minister, and they wanted to rent the house, so we rented a 7-room house. Didn't have enough furniture for 3, but it was very satisfactory, and we lived there until the end of March of 31, when we moved up to Sussex, up the experiment station. So that just about covers what our wedding trip was and some of the few details.